welcome to Ed's Not Dead. I'm Robbie Dodd. I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. C.H. Siddons. Hey, Casey.
Hey.
What's up, man?
How are you from afar?
I don't know. It's the second episode of virtual END. I'm starting to like it, getting into a routine.
I can tell you what I don't like is the use of END as an abbreviation. That's a new thing from Mr. Dodd.
That's Dr. Dodd.
Dr. Dodd.
I don't know when you're going to get that straight. All right, we're moving on. Peter Crable, you're there.
Here, co-host END representing.
I don't think I created END. I saw Crable use it quite a bit. Crabes, you like it, don't you?
In writing, I think it's totally fine. I'm not sure how I feel about it as a statement about the show.
END, yeah, you know me.
Okay. All right. Ed's Not Dead, as always, is brought to you by Pulp Education, a full-service educational media company specializing in leadership, instruction, and 21st century school reform. It's great to be back, folks. Thanks for joining us. You're going to find us at Ed's Not Dead PC on Twitter, and, of course, visit our website, edsnotdead.com. It's great to see you guys, and we are starting to get the hang of virtual Ed's Not Dead.
This is the quickest turnaround we've had in shows in quite a while. Recording back to back.
I think part of the reason for that is I think I'm less difficult to schedule with when it's virtual.
Listen, I've tried to schedule virtual podcasting several times when we've been almost canceled, and it's taken a global pandemic to force the change.
In me or us as a group?
Both. Yeah. He's definitely, like, every time you've been like, I don't know, he's like, virtual. We could do it virtual. You guys want to do it virtual?
I don't think I've been that down on it. I think, Mr. Krabs, you've not loved it.
Yeah, I've been pretty down on it.
Really?
Yeah, but I think it's working for us. Hopefully our audio sounds pretty good in case he doesn't sound too loud. That's my hope for this episode.
That's
you didn't even listen to the other episode.
Casey's not loud.
Which, by the way, for any of our listeners out there who are counting, this is episode 9 of season 3.
For those of you who are counters,
since Mr. Siddons doesn't like it that I do, because he says we're non-episodic.
That's right.
Now.
That's right.
All right, Casey, you have some show feedback for us, I believe.
Feedback. I have some feedback for you and me. Yes. So I was looking on our Apple Podcast preview of feedback of the reviews. And just so our listeners know, if you haven't given us feedback or given us a star, please do that. If you give us 5 stars, we will read your review. First of all. Second of all,
or 1 star. We'll also read 1 star.
We read 1 stars as well.
We are not picky.
Those come from Robbie's son's
friends.
His friends, his frenemies. But the reason why it's so important to rate us on iTunes is because it boosts our ratings on iTunes and it helps our search functions for when you're looking for podcasts about education. So anyway. So we have a first one from Jake. This is from December. He or she said, great podcast, thoughtful and interesting discussions about schools, teaching, policy, and research. Also fun. Love the quizzes and Dear Betsy. And we brought Dear Betsy back last time, which was great. Next set of feedback we have is from...
Thank you, Jake.
Yeah, from January. Excellent is the topic. Always insightful, informative, and relevant to the current issues in education. Keep it up. So that's another great review. And finally, most recently from March, favorite podcast I listen to is the topic. Whether you are directly involved in education or just have the desire to better understand how important public education is as a common good in our country, you must listen to Ed's Not Dead.
You must.
Who wrote that?
Oh, I don't know. They don't have a username.
Those were anonymous.
Yeah, Peter, Robbie, Casey are incredibly insightful, humble, and funny. They really bring education topics that could seem wonky to outsiders and bring it on home in a really clear and concise way. Keep it going. Can't wait for you all to hit it big time.
Ooh, big time.
Very nice. Thank you, listeners. Keep up the ratings on iTunes, and we still have very sweet Ed's Not Dead stickers that we can get out to people. If you want one, let us know. Mr. Siddons will send you one. And they're lime green, and they look great on your car.
And then you could read what's on the sticker now.
Yeah, you can, because they're much larger. I have one of the small ones on my truck, and I need to upgrade to the bigger, the larger diameter END stickers.
Listen,
all right,
the black ones are classic. Okay, now they're hard to get, and you can't get them anymore.
Casey, why does Mr. Crable have a microphone and we don't?
That's because he's holding out on us, and we don't want to get his germs.
He's upgraded his tech and has not told us what we need to do to upgrade ours.
I think he was afraid we wouldn't be able to figure it out.
Let's think about this for a second. Robbie has like 5 microphones in the room that he's sitting in, 4 mic cables, a mixing board, 3 mic stands, 3 pop filters, and he's using his headphones from his iPhone to record.
Well, hold on a second. I don't know what any of those things do.
You just start plugging them in, and then magic happens.
That's what Crable does with the soundboard. He's not our expert sound editor. He's a plug-and-play kind of guy.
That's right. You just plug in and see what happens.
I moved the soundboard, Mr. Krabs. I had to get it out of the way.
Sad day.
All right. Give me a quick quarantine update. How are you surviving with the 3 kids, Mr. Crable and Mr. Siddons? What are you doing to keep yourself busy?
Oh man, Crable, go ahead.
A lot of wrestling, a lot of crying, a lot of slamming doors. But we bought several pints of ice cream from I think this place called Jenny's or something like that in Ohio. I don't know. My wife knows about it, and they got all sorts of wacky flavors. So we're going to brave the storm by eating ice cream and probably watching TV.
Wow.
That's all right. That's good. That's good.
I started building a wall.
Okay.
A dry stacked wall on the
nice.
side of my property.
You're doing the dry stacked wall. You're not ready for the mortar wall. Your skills aren't there.
I'm going for the dry stack. I brought Frida outside, and she hung out outside while I did it all day yesterday.
Oh, she's in her little tent.
Nice.
And then
I recognize that stroller.
I know, it's your stroller.
It looks good.
I got that's my rocks that are stacked up, and then I got some foundation that's laid out. It's hard to see.
There you go.
Anyway, so I started doing that. Man. What's that?
It's a lot of stone.
Oh, I got 3 more shipments coming from Mr. Dunbar.
Wow.
Oh, nice.
You know, when I lived in Colorado, I built stone patios.
Did you?
Yeah, with like really big pieces of flagstone. And so you'd go around and you'd pick them up, like pincer grip on them like that. And then you'd walk them over to wherever you're building them. And I did that for, 3-4 months, something like that. By the end of it, dude, I had like awesome Popeye forearms. Oh, just great forearms.
Since I can't go to the gym, this is my squat workout. It's amazing.
There you go.
It's great. So that's what I've been doing, and video games.
Very nice. So
What about you?
I've been working a lot. This remote work as a school leader takes quite a bit of time. It's a brave new world, as I'm learning. So I haven't done as many around the house jobs as I would have liked to have done. I've spent a fair amount of time with the kids, walked the dog quite a bit.
What's the biggest portion of your time taken up by?
Email.
Just from staff or students or?
Yeah, just everybody.
Yeah.
But not so much students, staff and parents. There's a lot of questions about what education is going to look like this spring and the implications for parents. They're concerned about their kids.
Sure.
And, staff want to know how they're going to teach.
Yeah.
And so
a valid question.
Yeah, they're all big questions that will be decided over time.
Yeah.
Will be answered over time. So, but yeah, I'm going to try to this weekend. I'm going to try to turn it off a little bit and do some things around the house. I have a front porch to paint,
ooh,
which I've been putting off. So I'm going to try to do that.
Good for you.
Yep. All right, so we've got a great show today. We are very happy to have Lynne Harris, Mrs. Lynne Harris, who has a pretty amazing background, you guys. She has a lot of experience in the public health field. She's actually a registered nurse, and she's a career changer. She got into teaching a few years ago, and now she's running for an at-large seat on the Montgomery County Board of Education. So we're going to have Lynne on the show and talk to her about how schools have reacted to COVID-19 and how she sees education these days and her platform for the Board of Education race. So we're pretty stoked to have her on.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And Lynne, the funny thing about Lynne is that she's been a big fan of the pod since the beginning.
Yep.
And has been very consistent in sending us ideas for the pod on Twitter. None of which we've ever used, but we like them, and she always responds to our tweets.
Yes.
So so it's going to be great to have Lynne on. And before we get to Lynne, there was a pretty fascinating article by one of my favorite researchers, Eric Kanushek. He is a very well-known economist, I guess, at Stanford. And you guys have seen this piece, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Siddons, you read the whole thing?
Oh, the whole thing. I wrote notes and everything.
Yeah, okay. So Hanushek et al., because I'm a little challenged by the other two authors' names. Crable, you can take a stab at them if you want.
Well, I got to scroll back up. Mark Piopinik and Simon Wiederhold.
There you go.
Oh, Simon Wiederhold.
Wiederhold.
Hanushek et al. This is something that we've talked about and had a few arguments on the show about over the years about links between teachers' cognitive abilities, in other words, how smart teachers are, and the achievement of kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so Hanushek and his colleagues, as Hanushek often does, used international test scores, I think the PISA, to look at correlations and associations between teacher background, teacher ability, and how kids do. They also looked at teacher pay and the achievement of kids, and pretty interesting findings. Wouldn't you say, Mr. Krebs?
Absolutely, yeah. Do you want to give the punchline away?
You want me to give you the big one?
Yeah, I think it's important to start with kind of the findings and then work our way backwards.
All right. So differences in teachers' cognitive skills across countries are strongly associated with international differences in student performance. I quote, "An increase in teacher cognitive skills of 1 standard deviation is associated with an increase in student performance of as much as 15% of a standard deviation in the PISA test." So that was the big one, the first big one, which is really the I guess the higher cognitive skills teachers have, that has a pretty strong correlation with how kids do.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point to bring up. I think it's, and that's why we're discussing it, but the idea that smarter teachers can help lead to better students, I certainly think is a very important factor. It's not the only important factor, but I do think it is an important factor. And looking at other countries, I can't remember, I think he put Korea and Finland maybe on there and talked about how they pull exclusively from the top third of college graduates into the teaching force, and the United States pulls from all over. I certainly think that's an aspirational goal to work towards, that we start to pull from higher and higher achievers. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, we this goes back to season 1 when we looked at the McKinsey Institute study on teacher preparation in countries like Finland and South Korea, and how much more competitive it is than in the United States. Mr. Sids, I think we've had some arguments about this, because I think we all feel like teachers in this nation get into it for various reasons. The number one reason is probably not pay, and there's implications for teacher salaries in their research. What do you make of it, Mr. Siddons?
The first thing I was wondering about is how did they measure? The first question I had was where did they measure teacher cognitive skills?
I have that one from the OSED's Program for the International Assessment of Adult Competencies.
Yeah, I saw that.
2015.
I saw that, and then they narrowed it down by the person's profession and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
I guess I just question about the measurement of to what extent are teachers, adults, how are they measured and what does it look like? Clearly it's a well-established exam assessment of some sort. But then the other piece of it is towards the end in the implications, it talks about, causation versus correlation. And I think obviously if you have an intelligent teacher, you're going to be able to convey content in a way that shows that you know the topic. But just because that you're graduating at the top 5% of your class does not make you a good teacher necessarily, or an effective teacher outright.
No, I agree. I mean, there's a lot. I think we agree. There's more to teaching than just cognitive ability,
right?
But for the purposes of just kind of narrowly focusing on cognitive ability and its association with student outcomes, this is pretty compelling.
It is. And I think it's interesting that they talked about the value of increasing teacher pay and how that might impact the quality of teachers that you're going to get in the building. Increasing the salaries of teachers is certainly what they said is going to expand the pool of potential teachers, which is true. You're going to have a lot more people that are going to want to choose teaching as a profession because of the competitive salary. People are going to decide, well, it's worth it for me to go through this challenging process or have quite a challenging first 2-3 years of teaching because of the pay. But it doesn't necessarily, their research says that it doesn't indicate that more talented teachers would be hired out of the enlarged pool. But you're going to have a lot more teachers to pick from. There are some schools that are hiring teachers well into the school year, and there's just not enough teachers, effective teachers, or teachers that are willing to stick it through and through the entire school year. There's so much attrition. I don't know.
I have a question for you, because you've learned quite a bit about high school teacher programs. Are high school teacher programs attracting kids that otherwise cognitively could choose other interests?
In terms of like teacher preparation?
Yeah.
There's not a desire to be a teacher.
Okay.
When I go to middle schools and I talk about the career programs that we have and the academies that we have, typically the response that I get from students is either indignation, a neutral, whatever. And then oftentimes I get a lot of laughs when I say to middle school or 7th and 8th graders, when I ask, like, who wants to become a nurse? Who wants to become because we have a healthcare professions academy. Who wants to go into, the Navy? Who wants to go into teaching? And often the response is a laugh from a lot of kids and jeers almost. And I always expect that.
That's depressing.
Well, and my response is not to be. My response is always, so I anticipated that, and I want you to know that one of the reasons why I got into teaching was because I had an awful experience in middle school with some of my teachers in high school, and I wanted to do better than what my teachers provided me. So if you've ever sat in a chair in a classroom where you're thinking about why am I here, or this is awfully boring, then you should consider being a teacher to make it better for the next generation. And I after I say that, every single time I say that, there are 3 or 4 more hands that go up in interest for the pamphlet from the Teacher Academy.
And I think that's interesting just in and of itself. It sort of encapsulates somewhat about the article too, and I'm going to talk out of the other side of my mouth. I started off by saying, yeah, it's very important that cognitive abilities of teachers are high, but at the same time, informal poll here, the three of us, did any of us go into teaching because we thought it would be a dramatic cognitive lift for us? No. And that was what we were looking for. We were looking for something that would really challenge our brains in a sort of, mathematical way or something. I did not. I would say no, right?
I did.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, well, we know that's not true. But the only thing I would add, I agree, Peter. But I would say
my point is, let me finish. And then we get into it because you like kids and you like working with kids and you enjoy teaching kids and you enjoy and like all the other reasons. And I don't know, maybe that's somewhere in cognitive ability, but it's not. I don't know. That's a bit of a stretch for me, I guess.
Part of me wanted to start because I thought that I know I wanted to get into teaching to work with kids, but I knew that teaching social studies was my avenue to do that. I was interested in social studies. That has since transformed in a lot of ways to not teaching content, but teaching children. And I can teach a teacher any kind of content that you want to convey to kids or adults. I can't teach you to like children and to like to build relationships with kids and families.
Yeah, but the only thing I would say to that, the three of us have known a fair amount of teachers that have pretty good relationships with kids, but maybe aren't great teachers.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings me to my next point. I always have a really hard time with any studies that synthesize student learning with one specific factor, because there's so many different factors that go into teacher, learning and teaching on any given day. I mean, are you guys familiar with John Hattie at all?
Yes.
So
don't you love can't you see it on Crable's face?
It's a little smug.
When he's pulled something that he knows that we don't know about and he's about to hit us with some research.
A meta-analysis of research? I know it very well, Mr. Crable.
There you go. So John Hattie ranked 138 different influences in the classroom to judge the effect size of each on student learning. So an effect size of 1.
Oh, is that why you had to ask me what effect size was?
That is why I asked you I think I said, hey, what's that educational term for how much you learn in a given year? Usually represented by an N number. N equals something. But yes, I didn't tell you why.
Okay,
I wanted
to know that. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, so he ranks all these, I guess it's been updated, 252 different influences. So even that in and of itself, the idea that there's 252 influences that you could isolate out to have an effect on student learning, they don't, in reality, obviously none of them exist in a vacuum and by themselves. So while cognitive ability is important, it's not the only one. And as a side quiz, what do you think the greatest effect size on student learning and achievement is?
Teacher efficacy.
No. Socioeconomic background.
I think Casey had already pulled up the website and is looking at it.
So no, I taught it for Skillful Teacher, you dope.
Okay, yes, it is teacher efficacy at a 1.57 standard deviations. So, So anyway, what were you going to say, Robbie?
I was just going to say that, going back to the Coleman report, which I cite all the time. I think it was 1968. I know your friend John Hattie has broken these factors out and looked at effect size for each one of them, which is very interesting to me. But I think that Coleman found a long time ago that SES was probably the strongest predictor of achievement. And then the next one after that, which is actually compared to SES fairly small but significant, are teacher effects. And so teachers do kind of, without the breakout, globally a teacher has a significant effect on student achievement.
Well, and Hattie's research does talk about that. It refers to that, the socioeconomic piece, as a determinant of student achievement in a negative way. So Hattie's research focuses on things that accelerate student learning, things that keep student learning at a level that is consistent, and then they also talk about the level that would be for if it would be actually detract from student learning, and socioeconomic status would be the detraction.
And negative 0.12 effect size.
And I found negative teacher effect sizes in my research when we looked at project success versus departmentalization. And while I didn't look specifically at, I didn't call it teacher efficacy, a lot of the sub outcomes we looked at were things that would fall under teacher efficacy.
Right.
Like providing kids more autonomy because you trust them more, because you feel good about how you teach, those kinds of things. And certainly, Casey, your work in project success, I think you felt really efficacious in that setting, right?
Because you see the impact of your work on a day-to-day basis, and
you saw it in achievement. You've seen it. You've seen it implementing PS in your schools, Crable.
Yeah.
All right. One last thing, Mr. Graves. You want to comment on the implications for gender equality in Hanushek's piece? I thought it was pretty interesting, where the authors say, we find that cross-country differences in women's access to high-skill occupations and in wage premiums paid to teachers, given their gender, work experience, and cognitive skills, are directly related to teacher cognitive skills in a country.
Can you translate that for me?
Well, I think what it says is that in countries where teacher cognitive skills are found to be, on average, higher, that's strongly associated with higher pay for women in the field.
Yeah, fully agree. And I mean, I think beyond that too was also just the sort of I don't know if elevation of women within the workforce or, respecting ability, so on and so forth. But all of that, I think, just has to do with how a society in general views women in the important place that they can and do and should have. And you see that, obviously there's an effect on student achievement and stuff like that as well.
And, actually, and our society
I interpreted that incorrectly. It's cross-country differences in women's access to high-skill occupations. So access to any occupation for a woman is increased in countries where teacher cognitive skills are higher.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
So they're more enlightened because they have more enlightened teachers.
Correct.
And then women have more access to better jobs.
And there's a significant gender pay gap in our country that we've talked about this before, where it's not a surprise that women are paid less, or that the teaching profession is paid less than what they should be, considering that women are just generally paid less than men on the whole, and women make up most of the education workforce.
All right.
It's a sad truth, but that's where we're at.
Yep.
All right, you got the last word. Folks, check out this piece by Erica Hanushek in Education Next. I think it was, it's a year old. It's very old. It's out of date. It was in a compilation of the best ed stories from 2019. Mr. Sid, you'll tweet it out, won't you?
I sure will.
Okay. All right. Don't go away, folks. We will be right back. We're psyched to have Lynne Harris on the show. We'll be back in a minute. We are very excited to have Lynne Harris on the show tonight. Lynne is a registered nurse and educator who is running for the at-large seat on the Board of Education in Montgomery County, Maryland. Lynne is currently a teacher of the healthcare professions at Thomas Edison High School of Technology. Prior to being a teacher, Lynne served as the president of the Montgomery County Council of PTAs. Lynne has, as you guys know, has been a faithful ENB listener for 3 seasons.
She has,
haven't you, Lynne?
I have been long a member of your fan club.
and she has sent us many ideas on Twitter for topics for the show, none of which we've ever used.
That'd be many.
And they're all really good ones, I must say.
They are good, yeah.
They're really good. Well, instead of the topics, Lynn, we have you on tonight, and we're incredibly grateful to have you on. So let's jump in, okay?
Yeah, great.
All right, Lynn, as a registered nurse who teaches students in high school in a healthcare program, and also someone who's highly involved and interested in ed policy, you know more about ed policy than almost anyone I know. Give us your response to how school systems have responded to COVID-19.
On the pre-planning, I think universally, I think almost all school systems should have had a better disaster response plan, teed up and ready to go, just as a matter of resilience planning. But that's speaking in part from my public health background. I think MCPS and other school systems, once the handwriting was on the wall, seemed to have all kind of best foot forward at it, as far as I can tell. And I think I'm seeing, and I know we haven't figured out the special education supports, ESL supports quite yet, but I also know MCPS is really looking at that very intensely. And I also know MCPS is really looking at that very intensely, and we'll be looking on sort of individual cases on about how to best support our learners with special needs. So I think our ongoing response, is pretty darn good.
So Lynn, aside from being a teacher and a public health advocate and a public education advocate, you're also running for the at-large nomination for the Montgomery County Maryland Board of Education. So just kind of a big, broad question, what prompted you to run for the Board of Ed, and what do you hope to accomplish from it?
I decided to run because, to me, it seems like we are at a real tipping point in our county. Some of the things that our board led by student advocacy have started to take seriously over the past 18 months, like equity and diversity in our school system, has unfortunately also sort of ripped off some not necessarily progressive areas and priorities in some areas of our county. And it became clear to me and several others that this Board of Education was under attack by those who did not want to see us prioritizing equity, prioritizing diversity, did not want us to be doing things like looking at, boundaries in a comprehensive way. So I felt strongly that somebody that truly believed in equity and diversity and a very student-first approach needed to at least be on the ballot, and it needed to at least be speaking. And I felt that my decade of work in the school system, as an advocate through MCC PTA, has given me a very wide, deep knowledge of our school system. And I think the knowledge that I have, the deep belief in our public school system that I have, and my real commitment to equity and diversity and student voice in our system, all of that together, to me, it just felt like it was time.
Based on your understanding of not only our school system, but just boards of ed in general, why is the Board of Education so important in terms of why you're running?
Well, the Board of Education sets the policy. It sets the tone. It sets the direction. It says, this is where we're going. And then the superintendent is sort of supposed to make it so. And my concern over my years advocating in the school system is that we have some really good policies that sometimes we are not prioritizing enough. And then in some other areas, I think we need to be a bit more courageous to stand up and do the right thing. If we're going to be a data-driven, evidence-based school system, 13th largest school system in the country, majority minority, we need to act like it. And we need to, if we're going to say we're data-driven, if we're going to say we're evidence-based, then that's what we need to be.
So I'm curious. I'm sure you know about Howard County, Maryland, how they've recently gone to great lengths to, it sounds like, achieve a lot of the goals of what you're talking about. Do you have any specific thoughts on what they have done? Is that a model you would like to see Montgomery County recreate, or is it something that, given a magic wand, what exactly would the sort of ideal school system look like for you?
I think some of the best advice I was given when I was contemplating filing to run and looking at what that meant for me was, somebody said, be your authentic self. So my authentic self is what the school system, I think, should look like, is that every school should look like our county. Every school should reflect the reality of what we are as a system, which is no more than 37% farms. We should have that demographic mix. We're 32% Latinx, we're 28% white, we're 22% African American. Ideally, I think every school would be a microcosm of that, not that we would robotically put in place programs, processes, the whole, pro-busing, anti-busing rhetoric that some people are throwing around. Not that I think we should ever take draconian measures to achieve that, but I think that's the aspiration. That's what I would hope we would all want every one of our schools to reflect our county, because how are we getting students college and career ready if they're not in an environment that is the environment they're going to step into the minute they leave us?
Right.
Lynn, Casey and I, about 3 years ago, were having a discussion. We were standing in the media center of a gleaming, beautiful new school. And, I had the thought at the time of the ability with strained budgets, capital budgets in Maryland and across the United States to continue kind of an arms race of building schools. In some places in the nation are much more impacted with their ability to do new construction or to remodel schools than we are here locally. But what do you think about what we're about to experience with distance learning? Is that going to have any impact on the future of education in whether we continue to every year spend more money on trying to keep up with building brick and mortar places for teachers to teach and kids to learn?
I hope so. I mean, because I look at our county and I look at our capacity, and I know that level to level, system-wide, we aren't an overcapacity school system, really. At elementary, middle, high school, at each level, we have about the number of seats as we do students. Not perfectly, but about. And I think what you started with this whole, now that we're moving to distance learning, will that reshape the way we think about capacity pressures?
Well, Lynn, it's been amazing having you on our show. Finally, we appreciate your time so much. Since you are a fellow educator, we have to end our time with a quiz before you go. Are you game for a quiz?
A game!
All right. So, Lynn, we know you are an educator and prospective Board of Education member, but we want to know what you know about other Lynns of the world.
Ah, jeez.
If you get 2 out of the 3 right, you win.
MCTS Jeopardy Smackdown!
Listen.
Dang it.
We're going to give you a well-sanitized trophy.
That's right. Win. I don't choose the quiz. The quiz chooses you.
Right.
Number 1. Lynn, Massachusetts was the 5th settlement by Europeans. An early industrial center, Lynn was long colloquially referred to as the city of blank, owing to its historical reputation for crime and vice. Is it A, greatness, B, angels, or C, sin?
Sin.
That is correct. City of Sin. Very good.
The original city of sin.
Number 2.
I know that.
Great start.
I have ancestors that settled Lynn, Massachusetts.
Oh, nice. Number 2.
That explains you, Lynn, right there.
And Robbie can't pipe in on this one. This famous Lynn was a former NFL player and ultimately ran and lost for the Pennsylvania governor's seat in 2006. Is it A, Lynn Swan, B...
Lynn Swan! Pittsburgh!
Is that your final answer? All right. You're correct. That's right. That's right. Number 3. So you got 2 right. If you get 3 out of 3, you'll be the first guest to get 3 out of 3.
We'll put gold
tell
in the.
me, is one of you going to do the answering machine thing on my voicemail?
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a
we
good
should start
idea.
doing
We
that.
could do that,
We should
yeah.
start doing that.
We would love to do that.
You've reached the cell phone of Lynn.
I'm not sure we have quite that radio voice. Unfortunately,
they're gonna be like, "Who's this weirdo on your voicemail?"
Why do you have some random horrible nasal voice on there?
Number 3. Lynn is a surname of English, Scottish, Irish, or German origin. It has a number of derivations, but the place name may have derived from Brittonic Lena, which means A, pool or lake, B, spinning wheel, or C, tattooed folk.
I think it's spinning wheel.
It's incorrect. That's pool or lake.
I thought it was pool or lake.
Well, you got 2 out of 3. You've won. You're gonna get some Ed's Not Dead swag.
Pretty impressive.
Yay! That's good enough on Wait, Don't Tell Me.
That's right.
All right, Lynne Harris. It has been an honor to have you on END. Tell our listeners where they can find you on the interweb, on social media.
They can find me at R. Lynne Harris for my regular Twitter, and Lynne, LYNNE, the number 4, students.org. That's my Twitter, that's Facebook, everything related to my run for the Board of Education.
Awesome.
Because if you're not for students, why are you running for the Board of Education?
No, you didn't.
There you go. All right, Lynn. Good luck with the race. We have high hopes for you. We know you'll do well. And thanks again for coming on the show.
Thanks, guys. This was great.
All right. We'd love to have you. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Welcome back to Ed's Not Dead. Ed's Not Dead is brought to you by Pulp Education, a full-service educational media company specializing in leadership, instruction, and 21st century school reform. Well, that was great to have Lynn on the show, right?
Yeah.
It was awesome.
She was able to
finally.
Yeah, she was good. She knows a lot about ed policy.
That is for sure.
Yep.
We need to get her back on to talk about some specifics there.
I don't envy anybody running for a school board position anywhere.
No, I don't.
Or just any kind of political position.
I've never really had any interest in doing anything like that. Have you guys?
I do.
Vaguely, yeah.
Really? Both of you do?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think. There's so much. There's so much that can be done that impact kids in a real positive way from a school board seat.
Mark Twain had a famous line about school boards that I can't pull right now. Mr. Sids, will you Google it really quick?
I will. I've heard that quote.
Yeah, it's pretty funny actually, and it's a Twainism it's a good one. And this is going back to the
jeez. In the first place, God made idiots. That was for practice. Then he made school boards.
Oh my god.
That's great.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
Mark Twain.
That's an all-timer right there.
Samuel Clemens.
Anyway, Lynn accepted, of course.
Of course.
All right, so we're at the time of the show where we are not doing Dear Betsy. We got to keep our audience clamoring for Dear Betsy. So no Dear Betsy this week, but we have the second best thing to Dear Betsy, which is a Casey Siddons quiz.
Quiz show. Cue the music.
Looking forward to it.
Woo! I only have 4 questions for you guys.
Perfect.
You ready?
Yeah, because I'm.
You're losing steam.
This much radio in the pod is getting me.
Or as Gold member says, you're losing steam.
I am.
All right, number 1. As this is all kind of coronavirus related, but not in a negative way. Number 1, as of March 27th, how many state school systems are closed for the rest of the year? Is it 7?
What's the date?
Today,
March
the 27th, recording.
Okay.
The 7th, the choices are A, 7, B, 20, or C, 40.
40.
7.
The answer is 7. And it includes, or this does not include 2 territories of the Mariana Islands and Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I wasn't going to count those.
Craigle just made an inappropriate gesture to me.
Aww.
I didn't hear the question clearly.
Yeah, it was closed for the year, not closed currently.
I would like a do-over on
Closed
that.
for the rest of the year. How could it be?
He's looking at the ceiling and
Whatever.
looking at the picture, like,
When I start talking, he glazes over. It's fine. I'm the middle child. I'm used to it.
All right, go ahead.
All right, number 2.
I'm the oldest who doesn't listen to the middle.
Number 2. In the recent coronavirus stimulus package, how many billions of dollars were provided to schools to mitigate the virus's impact?
Trillions.
A, 100 billion, B, 13.5 billion, or C, 400 billion?
$13.5 billion.
I will go with 13.5 billion as well.
13.5 billion is correct, with at least 90% of that aid earmarked for school districts through the Title I aid formula. Just a little tidbit of information for you. There's another $3 billion that can be used by governors to use at their discretion to assist K-12 and higher education as they feel.
What percentage to Title I?
90% of that aid goes to Title I formula.
Didn't you think it was interesting in that piece that I sent to you guys about the history of civil rights in education from Brown that I'm supposed to plug on the show?
We're plugging it. This is our plug.
I'm plugging it right now by Kevin Casey. It was in the Post. He's the director of Ed Policy Programming at New America. I think when No Child Left Behind passed in 2002, you remember after that, the left's talking point became that it was an unfunded mandate.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think in that piece, and we highly recommend you read it because it is a really compelling look back at school reform going all the way back to Brown. In No Child Left Behind, Title I funding only went from $8 billion to $12 billion.
Wow.
So there was very little put in to the federal budget, really, for Title I. So I think that's where
fascinating.
that unfunded mandate talking point came from.
Wow.
Okay, interesting. One other thing I wanted to ask you about that, Mr. Sids. I'd be curious. Have either one of you read anything as we are headed full, or are we already in? What's a recession? 2 quarters of no growth?
Yeah, Jerome Powell said yesterday that he thinks we're in a recession.
Okay, so I'd like to some future show talk about impact on. I mean, the impacts on states are not going to come due until next year and the following year. What that's going to do to state pension systems going forward. Yours truly over here, he's not too far from retirement, starting to worry about that a little bit.
Got pushed back a couple years in the last couple of weeks, huh?
Yeah, somebody's going to keep working for a while. All right, go ahead, Mr. Siddons.
As an aside, it's called the CARES Act, but it also gives DeVos the power to grant significant relief from key accountability statutes under ESSA, which is just an aside that I thought I'd add in. Number 3, which is not included in the stimulus bill? Is it A, money for internet service / broadband access for families, B, money for internet-connected devices provided to students, or C, money for cleaning schools?
B.
It's A, money for internet service and broadband access for families. This is a little tricky.
Really?
The coronavirus package does not include dedicated funding under the FCC's, it's called the E-rate program, to provide internet service and internet-connected devices to students in need whose schools have shut their doors. However, there is money to provide schools or families in rural areas for broadband access. Now, what that takes the place of, and because it's included in broadband access and teleschool, I don't know. So it's a little ambiguous. So
Okay.
Interesting.
Did you say rural?
Rural.
How do you say
Rural.
Huh?
Rural.
Say it like you just said it.
Rural. What's so funny about that?
It's funny, right?
Why?
It's a little funny.
How do you say it?
I think the Scranton is coming out.
How do you say it?
I don't know. Rural?
Rural. Okay.
I don't know. Mr. Crable's.
I think you're both losing it a little bit.
He's very cosmopolitan.
Oh, I'm so.
I say it the city way.
Rural.
All right.
Number 4, last one. Monetarily, how different is this $13.5 billion to the money provided during the Great Recession of 2008's aid package? How much less money has been allocated? A, $45 billion, B, $72 billion, or C, $86.5 billion?
It's 86. It's C because it was $100 billion in TARP.
I'm giving it to Robbie without even letting Peter guess because that was really, really specific.
You really got that information.
That is absolutely correct. $100 billion was given to schools under TARP.
Oh, Crable, how jealous are you on that one?
There you go.
Jeez, I can't even give it time.
All right. So what was it? What was the score? Was it tie?
It was tied.
It's always a tie for me.
I got the first one and you got the last one.
That's right.
Yeah, there we go. We tied on 2, correct?
That's right.
We on the same on 2?
Yeah, 2 and 3. We
You
both got?
You both. Number 3 you did not get right.
Oh, we didn't get.
Okay. So we got 2 right.
Correct.
All right. All right, boys. Last thoughts for the show.
I would like to say, for teachers, be easy on yourselves. And this is uncharted territory. This is stuff that we've never done before. And you might be thinking your principal or your superintendent or your whoever's in charge is doing something wrong, or you get frustrated. But just remember that people are doing the best that they can in a really strange and uncharted time period. Including
kids and parents. Be easy on them.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep. Yeah, well said. Well said.
Yep, that is well said. All right, so Mr. Crable, you got anything for us? Anything profound? You're always good for a profound statement.
No, he really stole all of the thunder that I
everything you were going to
say myself. Yes. So what he said,
he seemed like he had worked on that for a while.
Yeah, it was really polished. It was kind of annoying.
I worked on it when I was working on my rural words.
You know, as distance learning is coming to fruition, I keep feeling like it means I have to go to work. But I don't really have to go to – I mean, I'm not really going to work. It's so funny how strongly associated getting in a car in the morning and driving somewhere is work.
It's work, yeah.
When I have to remind myself I'm actually just going to get up and take a shower and sit at my desk.
Right. And do things, but it doesn't feel workish.
Yeah, this is a whole – I mean, this whole working from home thing, I don't know about you guys, but it's – and then having kids, it is. Both my wife and I here trying to manage a 16-year-old and 11-year-old, and she's on conference calls all day and I'm working all day. I'm not quite sure how we're going to do it.
It's the pits, man.
You haven't enjoyed it at all, have you, Mr. Crane?
Well, I can't work from home. It's so difficult. You need to hide somewhere because they'll find you wherever you are. A question about eating Nutella or just some random thing. You're like, I don't know. Just give me 10 minutes. I just ate 10 minutes.
Is Pearl out of? Are all 3 of yours out of diapers?
No, Pearl's. She's only 22 months today.
So she's not there yet. She's not even at pull-ups yet.
No.
Okay.
Frida's already potty trained.
Oh, that's nice.
She's advanced.
That's pretty funny. All right, folks, you can find us at Ed's Not Dead PC on Twitter. We're going to try to do better on Twitter lately. We've gotten fairly lazy with Twitter. And then check out our website, edsnotdead.com. Will not refer to it as END because my 2 co-hosts don't like it, although I think it sounds cool. As always, spread the word about the show, boys. Great to see you.
Yep.
Mr. Siddons, when you tweet out or tweet about this episode, would you please tweet Zoom since we're using them to do this?
I did. I'm sure they will definitely pay attention to us.
Okay.
Thanks, at Zoom.
All right. If you have any show feedback, send it our way. Don't forget to give us a rating on iTunes, and we'll send you a very fancy ENB sticker. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you soon. Night, boys.
Night.
Good night.